What is up, my peeps? It is Friday, yes, and it is Pac-12 review day or preview day. Sorry, it's not Monday, it's Friday. Pac-12 preview day, and yeah, I am stoked to be here. Michael Carasnero here on Sideline Sports. Hit me up on Twitter at Diablos00. Yeah, and last night was an interesting night. Again, I said on Monday we'd have a little bit of a review because Utah and Washington State played up in the Palouse. It was an interesting game, but yeah, a lot to get to today. Some of the obviously Utah won that game last night 21-17. And again, it's been the first time since it was the first time. Well, I'll say this is the first time since 2011 that Utah won up at Washington State, but they have not been there every year. But still, it has been a minute, and that's the. But Utah holds on for the win. Cam Rising did not play, but yeah, 21-17. But the games this week, 8th ranked, and Utah was 14th coming into that. 8th ranked Oregon goes to Berkeley to take on the Golden Bears of California. The Trojans will make their way to Arizona, but Southern Arizona, as they will host the Wildcats will host them down in Tucson. The 12th ranked Bruins will host the Cardinal of Stanford, and Arizona State will go on the road again this week as they will be playing in Boulder, taking on Colorado. So Washington and Washington has a bye. Oh, pardon me. Sorry. I keep saying Oregon. I want to say Oregon, and they're playing right here. So Washington and Oregon State are the only two teams off this week in the Pac-12, Washington and Oregon State. My apologies for that. But as we look at the rankings or where everybody stands in the Pac-12, Oregon is undefeated in conference play. They are 4-0, 6-1 overall. The Utes with that win last night are 4-1. The Trojans are 4-1 as well. Utah 6-2, USC 6-1, UCLA 3-1 in conference play, 6-1 overall. Oregon State and Washington, the Huskies, both 3-2 in conference play and 6-2 overall. Cal, U of A, Colorado, and ASU are all 1-3 in conference play. The Golden Bears are 3-4 overall, as are the Wildcats. The Buffaloes are 1-6. The Sun Devils 2-5. Washington State and Stanford. Obviously, Washington State fallen last night. They are 1-4. Well, both Washington State and Stanford 1-4 in conference play. The Cougs 4-4 overall. Stanford 3-4 overall. And as we look at the rankings real quick for the Pac-12 coming into this weekend, again, Oregon was at 8, USC at 10, UCLA at 12, Utah at 14. So chances are Utah, again, it depends what happens, might creep up a little bit. But again, 4 teams in the top 15. And Oregon and SC both in the top 10 of the rankings. So it's one of those things where when we look at it, big weekend, obviously, all the ranked teams in the Pac-12 that are playing teams that aren't ranked. So they do need definitely want to get those victories to keep the charge going forward. And again, it is such an insane traffic jam at the top of the conference for the Pac-12 championship for who will be in the Pac-12 championship. But yeah, I mean, again, when we look at those standings, because again, it's the top two teams. It's not North and South, and I remind you of this every week. It's the top two teams. So, and it could be a North playing a South team. It could be two South teams from the way it looks at it. For it to be two North teams, again, a lot can happen, but a lot of it would have to happen for that to be true. And the Pac-12 championship game is in Las Vegas. And at Allegiant Stadium, home of the Raiders. So that'll be, again, a great sight. It was actually there last year for the Las Vegas Bowl when ASU played Wisconsin. That being said, Oregon, again, but they have a lot of insane games coming up. It's one of those things where when you look at Oregon and what they have coming up schedule wise, it's it's interesting. But again, we'll just focus on, like I said, this week. And we again watched Utah, and I'll get to that actually at the end since it is a review. But Utah did beat Washington State last night 21-17. So the 14th ranked team in the nation did win their game. But we are going to start off with that Oregon and Cal game. That will be 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific on Fox Sports 1. And if you look at it, I mean, again, it's one of those things where Oregon, big, heavy favorite. We haven't seen the consistency from Cal the continued consistency with Cal. But it's one of those games where, and people say, oh, it's a trap game, it's looking past it. At any level, if you're not preparing for the people, especially in football, for the people in front of you that are going to be punching you in the mouth, trying to make your day long and beat you, and in this case, upset you if you're Cal. Yeah, I just, if a coach does that, then any coach shouldn't, if he's sensing it from his team, should, take care of that right away. But if a coach doing it at that level, yeah, it's you shouldn't be coaching. And if you call yourself a competitor, then you shouldn't be playing, not showing a team that respect. But that's neither here nor there. I digress. It's one of those things where when you look at it, I do see Oregon as a heavy favorite, though, and the way they've been playing, I mean, offensively, and they are Oregon. Okay, so heavy favorite, yes, I'm saying I see that because the line is Oregon is a 17-point favorite. They're minus 17. The over under though is at 58.5. So they're thinking Oregon could hold Cal. Just a little bit. And it's again, to me, and we saw what Oregon's what their offense can do. We've seen it all season. What their defense can do, they were able to have quite a bit of success and keep their last opponent, UCLA, because the last time Oregon was on the field, they beat UCLA 45-30 again last weekend, and it was a battle of number 9 versus number 10. Bruins were 9, Ducks were 10, and 45-30 was the score. Again, Bo Nix, 5 touchdown passes for that young man. Only threw 28 times because they were running the ball all over the Bruins defense. But Nix was 22 for 28, 283. Like I said, the 5 touchdowns. He also rushed 8 times for 51 yards. And the Ducks, they ran the ball too. So they ran for 262 yards, passed for 283. And that is a total of 545 total yards for the Ducks. And they just absolutely dominated the Bruins. Defensively, the Ducks as well. I mean, no sacks, but they did have 3 tackles for losses. And the Bruins, I mean, they did rush for 262 yards. So you would have thought that, hey, man, it's or no, they didn't rush for 262. They rushed for 186. DTR pass for 262 in the defense. Zach Charbonnet, running back wise, did his thing, 20 carries, 151 yards. But you look at the Ducks, and again, what they've built up
today's assignment, express yourself
all season long. And it's just gotten better. And I literally again just have been extremely impressed with what the Ducks have done. And I mean, yardage wise and everything, their offense is 5th in the nation yardage wise at 517.1 yards a game. 5th in the nation. And in rushing, they're also 5th in the nation at 244.6 yards a game. So it's, again, an offense that is just going to put it on you. And they have the weapons to do it. And the way Bo Nix has been playing in this offense, like I said, moving on from week 1, but hitting conference play, it is just absolutely he has just been, I mean, again, absolutely solid. And when you look at Bo Nix in the Michael Penix Jr. to me is crazy. Real quick before we get to Washington's on a bye, but he is number 1. I wanted to say this before. Sorry, he's number 1 in the nation in yards. He's thrown for 2,934 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions for Michael Penix Jr. Again, the Washington quarterback, but Bo Nix has thrown for 1,809 yards, 17 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. And again, you look at 1,809 yards, but he has been running the ball at an insane rate for a quarterback. And I want to say he's over. He's rushed the ball again very, very well. And when we look at what Bo Nix has done, just from a rushing standpoint, he's rushed for, over 5. My apologies. 382 yards. He also has 8 rushing touchdowns on the season. So, again, for him to, and he averages 8 yards a carry. So, it's this Oregon offense, again, absolutely stout defensively. Like you said, Oregon, the top yardage leader in the Pac-12. They're number 1 in the Pac-12, like I said, at 517.1 yards a game. They're rushing for 244.6 yards a game. So it is right there. Defensively, when we flip it real quick, the battle that Cal's going to have defensively, Oregon is giving up 29 points a game. They're 10th in the Pac-12 in points per game. And then when we look at what they've done yards allowed wise, The Ducks are 7th. They've allowed 384 yards a game, but again, 517.1. They're lapping their opponents, to say the least. There, so, but Cal is going to have to stay patient. I mean, you look at Cal; they're only allowing 22.6 points a game. They're 4th in the Pac-12. And then in sacks, though, for the Ducks, they're 9th. They have 13 sacks on the season. Again, in double digits, but everybody chasing Washington leading the conference with 25, the Trojans at 24. The Trojans at 24. But for the Ducks, again, defensively, they're probably not exactly where they want to be. But again, you look at it, and for Cal, I mean, total yards wise, starting out with Cal offensively, they are 9th in yards at 370.6 yards a game. And then in passing, the Golden Bears are also 9th at 251.6 yards a game through the air. And rushing, I'm going to think they're 10th at 119 yards a game, just 7 rushing touchdowns. By the way, the Ducks lead the Pac-12 with 20, or no, they're tied for their 2nd in the Pac-12, or actually, I should say 3rd in the Pac-12 with 20 rushing touchdowns on the season. I did forget to mention that. So, but the Bears, 7 rushing touchdowns, averaging 119 rush yards a game, being 10th. So, look, if you're Justin Wilcox and the Bears, it is one of those things where when you look at what this Oregon team can do defensively, you can't get, or what they can do offensively. It's not, it can't become about matching them score for score, because for Cal, not that they can't, but we haven't seen it. And Jack Plummer's played very well. I mean, the last time we saw Cal on the field, they were going toe to toe with Washington, and they lost 28-21. Jack Plummer was 21 for 34 last week, with 245 yards, 3 touchdowns. So again, a solid performance, no interceptions, and they fell to the Huskies 28-21. But DeCarlos Brooks and Jaden Knott, DeCarlos Brooks had 10 carries for 43 yards, Jaden Knott 14 carries for 38 yards, and the Washington front just kind of really, really obviously contained that Cal run game. But you're going to need Ott and Brooks to again have an impact on the game, slow it down, keep that Oregon offense. And I know, again, it sounds over obvious, to overstate the obvious and a little cliche, but Cal can build it up. We've seen in spurts what Cal can do. And again, to go toe-to-toe with Washington last week, and the Huskies, like I said, did get the win 28-21, but Cal hung around in that game. And when you look at it, it's imperative that Plummer, again, gets off to a good start. And even if it's Ott or Brooks out of the backfield, I mean, getting those little little screen passes, get them out in the flat. Cal cannot give up 5 sacks, though, because the Huskies did have 5 sacks last week. Yes, Cal did have 2, but they have got to protect Jack Plummer better. And Oregon is definitely going to try and bring that pressure and see if, again, a 5-sack day, never good, especially when you lose by a touchdown. Again, there's a lot there. And in watching that game, there was a few times I was like, man, and you can't say, and there was a few times it was, I think on two of those, it was a secondary sack. And the other times Washington just, they got there quick. I didn't feel Plummer's holding on to the ball for too long or waiting, but yeah, Cal, the offensive line, again, keep him upright. But if you're Justin Wilcox, again, it's one of those things. Take quick screens. Yes, those are an extension of the running game. Whatever you have to do to pick up first downs and keep the Oregon offense off the field. Because like I said, Cal offensively, not – yeah, Cal offensively is a team that I mean, again, and like I said, they haven't shown the consistency. It's one thing where you see it and you see flashes and you feel they're on the brink, but they definitely need to see what they can tighten up. And it is going to be, like I said, it's going to be tough to do against the Ducks. And if you're and then like I said, where they were offensively, not doing sack wise, if you look at Cal defensively, they are seventh in the Pac-12. They do have 13 sacks. So both them and Oregon have the same amount of sacks. I mean, if that's one Oregon's weakness, Cal, again, 13 sacks on the season. So, yeah, they're all tied for seventh. Cal, Oregon, and Oregon State at 13. But that's where – so they've shown to been able to get some pressure, but if they have to bring extra pressure and you're playing man coverage, you better have those receivers locked up and in front of you, not letting them get behind you. If we look at yards a game, Cal is eighth, giving up 392.6 yards per game. So Oregon, again, looking to feast there. Like I said, Coach Wilcox's defense going to have to tighten up. And points allowed, Cal's actually fourth at 22.6 points per game, like I was saying. So that's so they've given up yards, and the whole cliche bend don't break kind of been them, but against Oregon, you can't. If you bend for too long, it's gonna explode. It's gonna be again it's gonna be like a river flowing down there. So they have their work cut out for them. And you look at again what Jack Plummer has done, and passing wise on the season, Plummer is ninth in the conference. He's thrown for 1,007, or yardage wise, he's ninth in total yards, 1,754 yards. He has thrown 12 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions for Plummer. And the 12 touchdowns puts him eighth in the Pac-12 there. So it's again a very stiff quarterback matchup between him and Bo Nix, with obviously again Nix probably being the favorite. But when you look rushing wise, again, Bucky Irving from Oregon is fifth in the conference, 536 yards that he's rushed for on the season. Jaden Knott, like I said, get him the ball from Cal. He is number 4. He's rushed for 618 yards. So this young man, definitely going to be a focal point of Oregon's defense to stop, but you got to find creative ways for me. And when you look at this game, for Cal to have a chance to win, again, creative ways to get Jaden Knott the ball. And when you have the 4th leading rusher in the conference, again, 618 yards on the season. And then receiving leaders, Jeremiah Hunter for Cal has 448 yards receiving. He's 13th in the conference. in receiving, and he's Cal's 448 yards. He does have 2 receiving touchdowns, does Hunter. And then right behind him at 14 is Michael Sturdivant, who has 445 yards receiving, and he has 5 receiving touchdowns on the season. So again, between Hunter and Sturdivant and Ott, you have the tools, and you can mix it in. But Jack Plummer again is going to have a game like last week with no interceptions at all, because you do that against Oregon, chances are they're not just putting up field goals, they're putting up touchdowns. So, but in this game, I know that's why you're here for the predictions. Again, even though it's in Cal, again, 3:30 Eastern kickoff, 12:30 here on the left coast on Fox Sports 1. I got to go with Oregon. Again, I think Cal, they proved they can keep it close against a team that, especially defensively, like Washington, that's got offensive firepower. And the Ducks, as we know, definitely have that. But I think the Ducks, off that big win last week, there's no letdown for the Ducks as they go into Cal. I want to say they win 34 to 21. 34-21 Ducks is my thought on that game, as 8th-ranked Ducks again travel to Berkeley to take on Cal. So 34-21. We'll see. Maybe I'll be right. Who knows? But 34-21 is my final to that game. When we get back, we're going to go down to Tucson and preview the 10th-ranked Trojans of USC coming in to take on the Arizona Wildcats. So a quick break, and I'll be back with the preview of the Wildcats and the Trojans. All right, we are back here on Pac-12 Preview. Talked about that Oregon-Cal game, the 8th-ranked Ducks going into Berkeley to take on the Golden Bears. I got the Ducks, again, winning that game 34-21 over Cal. The next game up, like I said, is the 10th-ranked Trojans heading down to Tucson to take on the Wildcats. That game is 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock here Pacific on the Pac-12 network. And USC, well, they had a bye last week, and the last time they were on the field, again, that's always tough. They are chomping at the bit to get back on the field as they fell to Utah 43-42. And for the Trojans, again, you look at their schedule. Conference-wise, beat Stanford, beat Oregon State in a close one. That was 17-14. Then they beat ASU 42-25, beat Washington State 30-14, and then they lost to Utah 43-42. Again, had the bye last week and got the nicks and bruises, I'm sure, cleared up. But they are in Arizona. They're in Tucson. Taking on the Wildcats, who, again, when we look at the standings, again, USC 4-1 in conference, 6-1 overall. U of A 1-3 in conference, 3-4 overall for the Wildcats. So Hey, Wildcats playing spoilers here, and that's what fans down in Tucson are thinking. But like I said, Caleb Williams, this young man has just been on an absolute tear. He was 25 of 42 against Utah for 381 yards his last game out, just building games, building just phenomenal performances is this young man. 5 passing touchdowns for Caleb Williams the last time they were on the field, the 43-42 loss to Utah in Salt Lake City. But when you look at it on the season, Caleb Williams, again, 4th in the Pac-12 in yardage, 1,971 yards passing. And like I said, he is 4th is Williams, who has thrown 19 touchdowns and only one interception for this young man. Touchdown wise, he's tied for 2nd. Him and Jaden Delora of Arizona. So the two guys, well, I was going to get to that too. I had it in my notes, but the two guys tied for 2nd in passing touchdowns facing off against each other. But Williams only the 1 interception. And I mean, yeah, you look at, again, like I said, he is 4th in yardage, 1,971 yards. He's completed just an eyelash under 64% of his passes on the season. And this young man, again, he was with Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley gets a job at USC. Williams enters a transfer portal and took a few visits, but inevitably ended up coming back to be with the quarterback whisperer coach in Lincoln Riley, who just seems to produce Heisman Trophy candidates, winners at the quarterback position. But yeah, for Caleb Williams, what this young man has done this year, just again, like I said, 1,857 yards passing, 19 touchdowns to just 1,971. Sorry, 1,971 yards passing, 19 touchdowns to just 1 interception. And then rushing wise, though, when we look at it too, Travis Dye, this young man, 2nd in the Pac-12 to, well, crosstown rival Zach Charbonnet. Travis Dye, 647 rushing yards on the season. Like I said, 2nd in the Pac-12, 7 rushing touchdowns on the season. And that has them tied for 2nd place because Cam Davis of Washington has 10 rushing touchdowns. So, but still, I mean, Travis Dye, 101 attempts, 647 yards, averaging 6.4 a carry, 7 rushing touchdowns. The man is a beast. I know teams have pseudo contained him because when you look at USC Utah, I mean, he did have the rushing touchdown, but 11 carries for 76 yards. Still a great game, 6.9 per carry. I mean, just about 7 yards a carry, but under that 100-yard mark, which this young man is very well known for going over. But again, he is just absolute beast in the backfield, 2nd in rushing, and individually receiving wise, USC's highest ranked receiver is at number 6. Jordan Addison, 539 receptions on the season, 585 yards for Addison, averaging 15 yards per reception, and he has 7 receiving touchdowns, which puts him in a tie for 1st with Jacob Cowing, of course, of Arizona, who they're playing, and Jalen McMillan of Washington as well. But yeah, Addison yards wise, 585 yards. And then you look at Mario Williams, he's 8th, 493 yards and 4 touchdowns for Mario Williams. So again, dual threats at receiver for the Trojans, and even Taj Washington, he's got 214 yards on the season, 17 receptions. But still, it's just the ringmaster, you can say, of Caleb Williams leading this offense, and individually there, it's a team. It's again solid. When you look at it team wise offensively for the Trojans, real quick, Fourth in yards, 475.3 yards a game. Third in passing yards, 293.1 yards a game. Fifth in rushing, 182.1 yards a game. Again, you're in the top 5 in every category in the conference. Chances are you're going to be winning a lot, as is USC. But for Arizona, when you look at it defensively, points allowed per game, Arizona is 11th in the conference. Opponents have averaged 36.3 points per game against the Wildcats as they're 11th. So definitely looking to try and clean that up this week. Yards allowed, the Wildcats are 11th again, 454.1 yards per game. And a lot of that came against Oregon. They got just absolutely abused by Oregon running the ball when Oregon went down to Tucson and beat the Wildcats. And then for points allowed, the Wildcats are 11th. They've allowed 36.3 points per game. I think I did say that. So, yeah, 11th there at 36.3. And then yards allowed, 11th as well, 454.1. And then defensively, sack-wise, Arizona is 10th, and they have 9 sacks on the season. So just not getting Jet Fish, again, it's looked improved. It's looked better. And then in Tucson, again, it's not about a silver lining in Tucson. The last few years, like I've mentioned, have been 4 or 5 years have been just absolutely brutal. But you can see what he's been able to do and been able to inject some energy. But offensively, again, with Jaden Delora moving the ball better, it's just defensively, they are a little bit behind the 8 ball. And when you're dealing with, obviously, a Southern California team that has so many weapons, it's daunting, but it comes down to, again, make the plays, keep everything in front of you. Don't give up the home run plays. But if they're again running the ball with Travis Dye, you can't go crazy in stacking the box, because Caleb Williams will make the plays over the top of your defense. But yeah, for USC, like I said, and defensively, USC, like I said, they are number 2 in sacks with 24. They're 1 behind Washington, who, again, being on a bye this week, USC could leapfrog them because they had the lead most of the season. USC could leapfrog them and take the lead again in sacks. And yards allowed, the Trojans are 6th in yards allowed, 381.6 yards a game. And total, and again, 381.6, and they're, at 475.3 a game. So solid there. And then in points allowed, the Trojans are 3rd in the conference, only giving up 22.1 points per game. And it's again, it's a daunting task, because this defense, like I said, which has 24 sacks, and you look at Tui Pelotu, pardon me. He's got 7 sacks on the seasons for the Trojans, leading the conference. So he's got 7 of the 24. And then Nick Figueroa has 3.5 sacks as well. But for Tui Pulutu, he, again, 7 sacks on the season, and he's also forced a fumble. Absolute beast. And I said in the beginning of the season, you'll recall that I'm like, oh, this defense can be had, but they have grown each week. The offense, again, helps it out, keeping them off the field, keeping them fresh. This USC defense, hey, Trojans, I'm just saying, now it's come to, maybe they can be had to, if you have an opportunity, you better capitalize on it. Anybody. So Yeah, to me, it's just USC, again, is that team that's rolling offensively. For Arizona, though, like I said, the last time they were on the field, they had a 10-point loss. They also had a bye last week, both teams coming off byes. 49-39 to Washington, but Jane DeLora, 25-34, 400 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And, but running-wise, I mean, Jonah Coleman, 14 carries for 53 yards. Jaden DeLora had 13 carries for 41 yards as well. And then DJ Williams, 6 for 32. Coleman did have a rushing touchdown, but yeah, it's you figure they ran 30, they had 33 running plays to 35 pass plays. So Coach Fish keeping them balanced. And again, they were right there with Washington going back and forth all game. They do fall short again. They made a late charge in the fourth, but not enough. 49-39 the final. But yeah, Jaden DeLora on the season. I mean, this young man has just been absolutely insane. And when you look at his individual numbers, passing wise, he is number 2 in yards, 2,274 yards for Jaden DeLora. And then in passing, so yeah, 2,000. He's number 2 in the Pac-12 behind Michael Penix Jr. And he's about 700 yards behind Penix, to say the least. So 2,274 yards. He's thrown, like I said, 19 touchdowns. He does have the 7 interceptions. He has been sacked 12 times, though. And that's again, that's the tough part, because you look at his counterpart. We look at Caleb Williams, who's he's been sacked 15 times, which again is a lot, but 30 times Jaden DeLora, I'm sorry, that's Cam Ward. Jaden DeLora's been sacked 12 times, not 30. That was my bad. I was looking at Cameron Ward from Washington State, who is a very sore man. But yeah, he's 19 touchdowns. He's only been sacked 12 times. And like I said, Caleb Williams has actually been sacked 15 times. So the U of A O-line has done a very decent job of keeping him upright, especially with a lot of the passing attempts. And when they got down to Oregon, again, he was flinging the ball, had to try and fling the ball all over the field. But I've been very impressed with this young man. I mean, he just, again, excuse me, like I said, 64% completion percentage, averaging 8.3 yards per pass. But he has definitely sparked this offense. And I mean, rushing wise, though, U of A's top rusher or highest ranked rusher is Michael Wiley. He's 18th. He's rushed for 297 yards on the season. Has Wiley averaging 5.2 a carry and does have 3 rushing touchdowns. Right behind him at 19th, though, is Jonah Coleman, who's rushed for 270 yards, averaging 4.6 a carry and 3 touchdowns as well. I mean, I like what I've seen from Wiley. I think Wiley and Coleman have been a 1-2 punch. Sometimes I think that, I don't know, what I've watched of Arizona, I think maybe Coleman is the guy. But either way, they're going to need those two to, again, get that blocking from their offensive line and keep Jaden DeLora upright. But if you can run the ball, obviously it opens up play action. Obviously it will be big for Arizona, because they've had some close battles throughout the years with USC down in Tucson. I know I said that about Oregon last time, Arizona fans. Again, not trying to jinx you. I'm just saying they've been close battles. They've been very close battles. And I don't, it's just, I think it can be for a while, but if they don't get to Caleb Williams, and again, I'm not even saying just sack, but knocking him down, hurrying him, so maybe he has to throw the ball away. It could be a long afternoon, early evening in Tucson. Yeah, late afternoon, early evening, as that game kicks off at 4:00 here on the West Coast, on the Pac-12 network. But yeah, I mean, for USC, again, what they've done defensively, again, and Lincoln Riley came in and everybody said, oh, it's a hot, coach, and a lot of new coaches, obviously, in the conference next year. There's going to be at least 2. Well, we'll see. Maybe 2, but we'll get to that later. At least 2. But man, for USC, look, Lincoln Riley's done it. I don't see them letting off the gas, especially after that. They had to live a whole extra week with that sour, absolutely just terrible taste in their mouth with losing 43-42 to Utah on the road in a phenomenal matchup there. But I'm going with the Trojans in this one. I say it's 42 or no 45-37. I think Delora puts up some points on them though. I really do. 45-37. The Trojans do get the victory over the Wildcats in Tucson. And man, what a game. What a game I think that is shaping up can shape up to be. But I think USC again just has too much in the end. 45-37 Trojans over the Wildcats in Tucson. Well, the Bruins off their loss to, as we'll transition here, off their loss to Oregon last week, they get to return home to the friendly confines of the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and they get to host the Cardinal of Stanford. That game is 10:30 Eastern. Sorry, 7:30 Pacific on ESPN. The Bruins will be showcased. And like I said, the last time they were on the field, fans, it was a little tough for them, a little tough for the Bruins. But I will say this. They went toe-to-toe with Oregon. Oregon got some key stops, and UCLA had to go for it on a few things. It was a good game, but hey, hats off to the Ducks. But the Bruins return home to take on the Cardinal. And yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, his last game, like I said, against Oregon, he was 27-39, 2 touchdowns. He actually did throw an interception. He also rushed for 38 yards in that game as well. But this young man, again, to that point, and he didn't have a terribly bad game. I still say he's in that Heisman talk. Again, a lot has to happen. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson for UCLA, this young man, again, has been there a while, just gets Chip Kelly's offense. You have a runner like Zach Charbonnet, who, again, I've been so huge on. I think he'd be taking Heisman votes away from DTR. But for UCLA, they're going to want to get off to a fast start, not let Stanford hang around on that. And, they're a team that, like I said, it's when you look at what they can do offensively, UCLA, third in the conference, 497.4 yards a game. They finally went under the 500-yard threshold, I think, after the Oregon game. But yeah, 497.4 yards a game for the Bruins. They are third in the conference with that. Passing-wise, as a team, 289.6 yards a game, fourth in the conference. Rushing-wise, they are second in the conference, 207.9 yards a game. Again, it is a Chip Kelly just to the T, high-octane offense. But again, when you have a runner like Charbonnet and the running backs, like I said, he had at Oregon all those years too, it is based off the running game. And you can spread people out, but you still need to be able to run the ball. And the Bruins are able to do that. So defensively for Stanford, they are going to have their hands full, to overstate the obvious. But again, Zach Charbonnet, like I said, on the season, he is the leading rusher in the Pac-12, 766 yards on the season on 107 carries. So that's 7.2 per touch and 7 rushing touchdowns, like I said, for Zach Charbonnet on the season. The young man, again, has just been an absolute stud, and you can see it with the way he runs. And it's it is phenomenal to watch, because he can, again, he wakes up and he steps off the bus and he's got seemingly just 100 yards in his pocket. So just so impressed with this young man on the season. And again, getting close to that 1,000-yard mark. And again, he's 100. Travis Dye, like I said, 647 rushing yards on the season. So he's 119 yards up on Travis Dye going into this week. And I mean, you just can't say enough about Charbonnet and what he's meant to the offense. But again, teams knowing he's going to get the ball and not being able to do anything really, anything about it. So, man, I just again, hats off to him and the season he's had. And I mean, even receiving wise, he's got 15 catches for 171 yards, averaging 11.4 per catch. Yes, it's 48th in the Pac-12, but when you look at it for a running back, that's he's giving you 11.4 yards per reception when he gets it. So, I mean, again, nothing this young man can't do. So, yeah, I mean, offensively, but receiving wise, but UCLA's top receiver is Jake Bobo, who's got 32 receptions on the season for 486 yards. He has gotten in the end zone 6 times, has Jake Bobo for UCLA. And then yeah, he has been their guy, pardon me, has Bobo. So it's and then Kashmir Allen has 36 receptions on the season for the Bruins, 244 yards, one touchdown for Allen. But yeah, Bobo is definitely the top receiver for the Bruins. But when you look at him as a team real quick too, I mean, what they've done, again, like I said, yardage wise, third, passing, fourth, rushing, second, defensively on the other side, points allowed per game. UCLA is 6th, right behind Oregon State. They've given up 25.9 points per game. So right in the middle there in the Pac-12, but 25.9 per game. And then in yards allowed, the Bruins are 5th. They've given up 373.4 yards a game. And in sacks, though, the Bruins right now are 6th as well. They have 15 sacks on the season. And so I've had, some success-ish getting to the quarterback, but 15 sacks on the season for the Bruins, 6th there. So, I mean, it's, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, real quick to wrap him up offensively, like I said, he's 8th in the Pac-12 in yards, 1,772 yards, but 73.8 completion percentage. And that is, for starting quarterbacks, that is tops in the Pac-12 at 73.8. Bo Nix just behind him at 71.5, like I said earlier, but 73.8% completion percentage for DTR. He has, like I said, thrown 17 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. He's also rushed for 8 touchdowns. He's only been sacked 6 times. So, again, when you run the ball, not going to have that many opportunities to sack the young man. We have somebody like Zach Charbonnet. But, again, he's just not going to stay in the pocket and get sacked, so he can move around, but delivering a great ball. So only been sacked 6 times on the season. And I mean, Bo Nix has only been sacked 1 time. But yeah, for UCLA, again, love what they're doing. Stanford last week, yes, they did get the 15-14 win, not scoring a touchdown against the Sun Devils. They beat ASU 15-14, 5 field goals. Tanner McKeith had to throw 57 times, 33 for 57, 320 yards, no touchdowns on 1 interception. And Stanford only rushed for 78 yards, but yet they got 5 field goals and the Sun Devils couldn't score in the second half. Stanford's banged up. I mean, again, for them to beat UCLA real quick, they're going to have to get to Dorian Thompson-Robinson and try and shut down the running game. I don't see it. If they're just kicking field goals against the Bruins, I see the Bruins winning this one big. I'm going to say it's going to be 45-17. 45-17 Bruins in this game. They just have too much. Again, I love defense, and I love the running game. And they play a little bit of defense, and they have a phenomenal running game. So that is at 45-17 Bruins in the Rose Bowl. And last but not least, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 here on the left coast. The Sun Devils stay on the road and they visit Boulder as they are taking on the Buffaloes. And that game is on ESPNU. So do check it out. Again, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 here Pacific. Look, I just talked about Arizona State. Defensively, that was the best performance of the year that they had as a group last week against Stanford. And when you do that, when your secondary has made such improvements for defensive coordinator Donnie Henderson, they're long, they want to play man, they want to be physical. They kept Stanford out of the end zone. 5 field goals for Stanford. And unfortunately for the Sun Devils, area offense didn't score in the second half. I mean, hats off to a Stanford defense that I said that we talked about last week with Chris Cartman, publisher of Sun Devil Source for 24/7 Sports. Again, give him a follow on Twitter. Find out all ASU. Much props when we have Chris on. He's actually traveling right now, so that's why we didn't have him on today for the Boulder game. He's headed up to Boulder, covering the game now. So we'll catch up with him next week. But yeah, your defense can build on that. You saw in their eyes talking to the defensive. I saw in their eyes talking to him this week that they're not pointing fingers, but off their performance, they're excited. Like, we kept the team out of the end zone. We gave up 5 field goals. And, Jordan Clark was saying, he said last week, it's not, this whole bend, don't break thing it's not bend, don't break. It's we need to keep teams out of scoring position. And not just because, again, the offense didn't score in the second half. He wasn't pointing fingers, but it was a phenomenal game by the ASU defense. I mean, one of the best defensive performances of the season in general in the Pac-12, but by the Sun Devils most definitely. And they're looking to keep it up against a struggling Colorado team. Don't know which quarterback is starting yet. The Buffaloes last 42-9 last time they were on the field to Oregon State. JT Shrout, he got the start. He was 13-29, 206 yards passing through 2 interceptions. They only rushed for 84 yards against the Beavers defense. Again, they have an interim head coach as well, Sean Aguano for ASU. News this week, again, he's taken over play calling. He talked about being more aggressive. And as an interim coach, to him, it's not a knee-jerk reaction to try and get the job. If you know Coach Aguano, that's not him. So, again, Glenn Thomas obviously having input. Coach Aguano still working with him. It's not that Coach Thomas won't be. But I will say this, him taking over the play calling, a little bit more no huddle, kind of going up tempo, getting signals, and they were working on it this week in practice. Looked very, very good. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting if the defense plays like that against Colorado. Again, Colorado has, when you look at the team overall rankings in the Pac-12, I mean, total yards, Colorado is last in the Pac-12, only 286.1 yards a game. ASU's 11th, but they're at 353.6 yards a game. When we look at passing for Colorado, they are 12th, ASU's 11th, 176.6, ASU at 218.4. And then when you look at rushing, the Sun Devils are actually 6th with 135.1 yards per game. Colorado's 11th at 109.6. So, and then defensively, points per game, points allowed, ASU is 9th at 28 points a game allowed. Colorado's last at 38.7 points per game allowed. Yards allowed, again, Colorado is last, 473.3, ASU 10th at 407. So you look at it, I mean, again, both teams bottomish defensively. But for Utah, for ASU, when we look at ASU only has 8 sacks on the season. They're 11th. Colorado has 6. But individually, still defensively, I got to give a shout out to Kyle Soley, who is leading the Pac-12 in tackles. and they had a phenomenal, him and Merlin Robinson both had phenomenal games against Stanford. But I mean, over 25 tackles for the two linebackers, solely leading the Pac-12, 87 tackles on the season for Kyle Soley. So, I mean, again, giving him a shout out. And interceptions, Kyle Soley, again, tied for fourth, but he's got 2 interceptions on the season for the Sun Devils. So this young man, again, came back. Obviously, COVID had an extra year of eligibility, came back, improved his game, and man, just works at it every week. Puts his head down, grinds, is a leader, holds his teammates accountable. Kyle Soley having a phenomenal year. But hey, prediction-wise, I'm going with the Sun Devils here. It's not because of the hat. I think Colorado, again, they have injury problems at quarterback. They're giving up a lot of points. They're not really stopping anybody defensively. I think Valade should have a huge game this week. Daniel Nagata as well. Give them the ball. Coach Iguano taking over play calling. We'll see what happens. But I say the Devils actually put up 37 this week. They win 37-10 over Colorado on the road and get the victory. Before we get out, I just want to remind everybody of the schedule there. So, again, Utah did beat Washington State yesterday, 21-17. I talked about in the beginning. Cam Rising didn't play. Went through warmups, and not a lot as to why he didn't play. So I'll be looking at that over the weekend. I will talk more about that on Monday, though. It'll be part of the Pac-12 in review, even though they played yesterday. But Utah got the win last night. But again, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Oregon is at Cal on FS1. And then 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific, USC down in Tucson taking on Arizona on the Pac-12 network. And then 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 here on the left coast on ESPNU. ASU takes on Colorado. And the nightcap in the Pac-12 on ESPN, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. The Bruins, the 12th ranked Bruins, host the Cardinal at the Rose Bowl on ESPN, like I said. So, again, I got Oregon over Cal. I have USC over Arizona, Arizona State over Colorado, and UCLA over Stanford. Those are the picks, man. Go with those. But going to get out here. I want to thank everybody at Sideline Sports, my guy JB Ellis, and the crew there, Eric Wilson, my brother. Again, always grateful to you. And everybody at Sideline Sports. Again, I'll be back on Monday, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. here on the left coast. And you can check it out. Enjoy your weekend of college football. Don't get in too much trouble out there. Have fun watching college football. And I will see you Monday here on Pac-12 in review.